Okay, 20-2s, we're going to look at 5.6 confidence intervals on page 29. So 5.6 confidence intervals, page 29. So we're going to look at the confidence level, and that's actually the likelihood that the results for the population lies within the range. So this is like how likely, how confident are you that it's going to happen. So that's the likelihood that the result lies within the range. And our confidence interval is kind of like what's our minimum to maximum estimate of where our data should lie. So it should always look like this. And then we lastly want to we'll talk about the confidence interval. It's kind of like what's your minimum to maximum. So it'll be like, oh, from this many to this many people will happen or have this. So our last thing that I want to add in was margin of error. Margin of error. So you're always going to see that it's going to be like a plus minus percentage, like how much above or below should that percentage change. So you'll see that that will adjust. Like it's going to be, you can be plus or minus, meaning like you can have 2 people above or 2 people below, or a percentage above or a percentage below. So we're giving ourselves like a little error just in case like our estimation is off. So margin of error. So the first thing we have to do is we want to look for within our results, like we want to read the question, look for the confidence level, which will be usually stated very clearly. A 2010 poll determined that 65% of the people agreed that wind power should be used over hydropower. The result of the survey was accurate within plus minus 2.9%. This right here is your margin of error. And whenever they give you this is going to happen 19 times out of 20, that's going to be your confidence level. And you're going to notice that for each one, it kind of states that for you. So it's really clear for all the questions where they do ask for the confidence level, it's given to you like that, confidence level. So I'll kind of look at the next question just to show you. Do you see how it says 4 out of 5 times? That's your confidence level. For this one, your confidence level will be 17 times out of 20. And you see that? So it's kind of clearly telling you how many times that this actually occurs. So there's your confidence level. So you don't really have to do much digging for those. It's clearly stated. So for the first one, they ask for state the confidence level. You're going to take 19 divided by 20, and you're going to change that to a percent. So we want to use our calculators to divide and then multiply by 100. So in a scientific calculator or a regular calculator, like graphing calculator, 19 divided by 20 gives me this. Always multiply by 100 because we need the percentage, which is 95%. That's our confidence level. So we have a 95% confidence level that our data will fall between this interval once we create it. So always multiply by 100 to get your percentage, which is 95% confidence. Now we want the confidence interval. This is where you take the standard kind of average number. So we know that 65% is kind of like the average number, and our margin of error is that we're thinking that we could be plus or minus 2.9%. So we always take our average number, which is that 65%, and we always do that plus minus our margin of error. So what we need to do is split this into 2 parts. We always have to take our average and add the margin of error. and then we have to take the average and subtract the margin of error to actually get the interval, meaning your max and your min values. So in your calculators, you're just doing 65 plus 2.9 to get your max. This is your max, which is 67.9%. So we're expecting that the max kind of interval that we're expecting is 67.9% versus our minimum would equal 65, take away our margin of error, 62.1%. Okay, so that's our max min. That would be the interval that we're expecting our data to fall into. Now, this is where we need to apply these. We need to actually figure out how many people will fit into these level. It fit into this 65% plus minus the error. So they're telling us that the total population of Nineveh is 33,220 in 2010. State the range of numbers of people that would expect to be that would be used over hydropower for generating electricity. So we need to take our population and find out what's the max population versus the minimum population for this data. To find our max, you take your number, 33, the population, and you multiply it by the decimal form of your percent that we have above for max. So actually, to make our life easier, step 1 is what I would do is I would take my max and divide it by 100. So it'll be less steps later on. You need the decimal form, and then same thing for min. Take your minimum percentage from question B and divide it by 100. So you need the decimal form in order to figure out the population. 67.9 divided by 100 is 0.679. And 62.1, we would write 0.621. You're going to multiply this max and the min by the population, because that will tell you how many people we are expecting the range to be in within this range. So we'll see what's the minimum people that will fall within this category and what's the max people in the population that will fall within this category. So you're multiplying 0.679 times 33,220. And you should get, which we want to round down. We don't want to round up because it doesn't make sense. So round down to 22,556 people. And our minimum, we're going to go 0.621 multiplied by 33,220. So again, round down for people. You don't want to round up. We can't create a person. So that's going to be the minimum. So our range is telling us that the people who agreed that wind power should be used over hydropower is from the minimum 20,629 people to 22,556 people. So that's kind of the range. What's the lowest amount of people they're expecting to agree with this, and what's the maximum number of people that we would expect. Remember, range is where you have like max versus min kind of idea, so that's what they mean by range. Good. So use your percentages from B, change them to decimal value, multiply by the population in this case. And you'll see that the other ones are really similar, so you'll get it by more practice. Question number 2. An advertisement for a body lotion claims that 80% of its users reported smoother and softer skin after 2 weeks. So that's kind of like the average, right? We will use that. The result of the survey was accurate within 3.5%. That's the margin of error. Within means like saying plus minus. That's another way of saying plus minus. So within 3.5%. So margin of error. And then they're telling you the confidence level is 4 out of 5. So we're going to always take the 4 divided by 5. 4 out of 5, make it a fraction. Always multiply this answer by 100. So 4 divided by 5 in your calculator is 0.8 multiplied by 100 gives you 80% confidence level. So we have an 80% confidence level that the people will fit within these categories. Determine the confidence interval for the survey results. So the confidence interval where we have that max percentage versus min percentage. So we start by writing the average plus minus the margin of error. And then we have to split it up. We have to do it as an interval. So we have to say what's our max and what's our min. The max is when you add the two numbers together. So I added them together and I got this. And then you're going to subtract the two numbers to get the minimum. So you should have gotten 76.5 for minimum. Okay, so there's our confidence interval. We have a 76.5 to 83.5 kind of confidence interval for this data. If all 2,500 people at the shopping mall use the lotion, we want to now figure out how many people are expecting to have smoother and softer skin. So that's where we use our max and min numbers. Max versus min. So our max number, we have to take that number just like in the previous example, and we have to divide it by 100. Same thing for min. We need to change them both to decimal forms first in order to be able to use them. So this one's 0.835 and 0.765 when you divide them by 100. Next, we multiply by the population, which in this case, there's 2,500 people. And that will tell you what's the max number of people they're expecting to report smoother and softer skin versus what's the minimum. So you should be getting about, remember, round down for these numbers, 2087. And round down for this one, 1912. Okay, so we're expecting our range to go from the smaller value to the larger number. So the ranges, we're expecting 1,912 people to 2,087 people to report smoother and softer skin after 2 weeks of usage of this lotion, just from our confidence level, okay? So from all that information, this is what we were able to find. So very similar to question number 1. Example number 3, a poll was conducted to ask shoppers the following questions. If you had a choice of car A or car B, which would you buy? The results were 55% for car A and 45% for car B. The results were accurate within 4.2% of points, and there's a 17 times out of 20 confidence level. Which car would be sold the most? Okay, so we kind of have to look at the range of percentages and kind of make a decision from there. So we know for car A, we have a 55% average with that margin of error of 4.2%. Okay, so that's when we're talking about the confidence interval. So our confidence interval, CI, would be 55 plus minus that margin of error. Car B, the confidence interval would be, we know that there's a 45% kind of average liking of this car, and then we're going to have that plus minus the results of 4.2. So we need to find that max and min and make a decision from there. So our max, if we added the numbers together, we add 55 plus 4.2, we get 59.2%. And 55 minus 4.2 would be 50.8. So we're saying that 50.8% to 59.2% of people will choose car A. Versus 45 plus 4.2 would be only 49.2%. 45 minus, actually that should be the max. So my max would be, when I added them, I found 49.2%, like that one, and 45 minus that 4.2 would give me 40.8%. So our min to max value is, we have 40.8% to 49.2%. So by looking at this, it seems like the better investment would be car A, because more people seem to want to buy that one. So car A would be the one I would choose. So car A would be the one most sold, because it has a higher percentage from the min to the max. So its min is higher than both numbers for car B. So its minimum to maximum buyers are way higher than car B in comparison. Okay, so for this one, example number 4, they're not asking us for the confidence level, and they're not even giving us that 4 out of 5 or 17 out of 20 kind of number, so that we don't need to find that. We need to find out what the average number is. So they're telling us that the tennis ball has a mean diameter of 6.7 with a standard deviation of 0.05. For quality control, tennis balls with a diameter in the range 6.65 centimeters to 6.75 are acceptable. Okay, so we know kind of our minimum to maximum. Minimum, maximum. So it seems like our margin of error is that standard deviation, so we could be plus minus that 0.05. Now, in order to find out our mean value, we need to kind of subtract from our max the 0.05 to see what's that number less than that. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take 6.75 and subtract the margin of error, 0.05, to see what our average is, just to confirm that it's the number above. So 6.75 minus 0.05 gives us 6.7, which we know is the mean diameter, so that's good. So remember, our confidence level is kind of like our average, which is 6.7, and then we're going to go plus minus our margin of error, 0.05. So we are already given our confidence level. So instead of having to like calculate it, we already know our min and max values, but this is if you want to do it the way before. Remember, our max is when you add the numbers, and our min is when you subtract the numbers. So if you add the numbers, you get 6.75 centimeters, which we already knew was the max, and our minimum is when we subtracted the numbers, which was 6.65 centimeters. So that's our interval. We already had that information. Okay, so that's our interval. The margin of error was that plus minus 0.05, which is the standard deviation in this case. That means you could be above or below by 0.05. Okay, so that was kind of given in the question without having to do much work. So all the work was already done for you in this one. It's just about making sure you understand what these numbers mean. And our last example is they want that confidence level. So they're telling us that 19 times out of 20, this will happen. So that's our confidence. If you divide them, you get 0.95. Always make sure you multiply by 100 to change it to a percent. So confidence level should be a percentage. Now they're telling us that in a recent poll, 28% of Canadians said they would vote for the New Democratic Party. So that's kind of our average number. So 28%. And then it says that within, that's that plus minus number. I told you in a previous question that whenever you see within, that's like saying the margin of error. So now we can find our max to min value, or min to max. Our max is when you add them, and our min is when you subtract them. Okay, so you should be getting for your max 31.2% when you add the numbers. And when you subtract the numbers, I got 24.8. Okay, so this is similar to questions 1 and 2, where they're giving you now the population and they're saying who would they expect to vote for the New Democratic Party. So that's where you use your max and min numbers and change them to decimal values first. Always divide by 100 to change it to a decimal value. So by dividing by 100, I get 0.312 because that's the only way. You can't use a percentage to calculate values. You have to use the decimal form. And then you multiply both of those by the population. To get our answer. Okay, so 0.312, we're multiplying by 33 actually million 740,000 population. So you should get about 10,526,880 people versus the minimum I found that it was 8,367,520. And then remember, we want the range. So we always want to go for a range from min to max. So we're saying that there's going to be 8,367,520 people to 10,526,880 people that will vote for the New Democratic Party. Right? So that is very similar to questions number 1 and 2. So those are really good questions to make sure you know how to do. As you can see, like the main idea is if you see 17 out of 20, that's your confidence level. And then from there, the confidence interval is where you take your average plus or minus the margin of error. You have to find the max by adding, the min by subtracting. And then if they ever want to find out the range of people or items that will occur within that max and min range, you just have to take the decimal form, multiply by the population or how many items you have to find out what your min to max are for the range. Okay, so really similar for each of these questions, nothing really crazy. So what you want to do is practice, go back to your homework, which is way above here. You want to practice homework questions and make sure you guys start to get ready for your unit test. That's day 7, page 302 to 304, 1, 3, 5, 6, and 8.